the idea of an outsourced CFO and commercial offering is that those balls that get thrown in the air often are caught by someone else, or at least the business owner's got the support of someone else, particularly in our mum and dad type businesses. They would be up at night when things like that happen.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Beyond the Balance Sheet. Today we're joined by Melanie Barton, who returns to accounting professionals after 13 years in Queensland. Mel will share with us how she transformed from an accountant to a CFO and how an outsourced finance team can help business owners.
Welcome to the podcast, Melanie Barton, and more importantly, welcome back to Accounting Professionals.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
It's good to have you back. For those that don't know, Mel actually started with us way back in 2009, which we worked out was 17 years ago.
We were both a lot younger.
That is true. We've called you a boomerang. We like staff members that go off into the big wide world and then find their way back to us. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in the meantime, because it's been pretty interesting.
About 11 years away from the Illawarra. I'm happy to be home at Accounting Professionals too, which is nice. For people that don't know, I studied my CA here in the period of 2009 through to, when was it, Mark? Here we go.
2014.
2014. In that time, very much learnt foundational skills of public practice as Mark's manager, and made a decision as a family to relocate to Southeast Queensland, and at which point I joined Crowe Horwath in the business advisory division for a couple of years in Brisbane, and that was a similar experience to Accounting Professionals but on a larger scale. Different to a smaller firm in that you're exposed to audit, tax law, and an element of corporate finance, and obviously a much bigger team. So we had sort of about 120 personnel in that office, opposed to APs, generally somewhere between 20 and 30,
Yep.
Depending on what's happening. So we got to work with some really good mentors and different types of businesses, particularly being in Queensland. There's a lot of mining industry work, bigger numbers, bigger profits, which then comes with more learnings again. I then decided after a couple of years to flip into a commercial role, which was at Australia Zoo, and acted as CFO for them for just shy of 2 years. Different business to what you would ever think you would land in as an accountant, but what it taught me was the skill set that we have as numbers people can add a lot of value operationally.
Mm-hmm.
In that position, me and my team would work closely with the heads of retail marketing, the zoo staff themselves, which was a major resource and cost centre for the zoo, and their charity Wildlife Warriors. So it was a really good mix of different exposure to the way a business runs.
Yes. So did your time at Accounting Professionals prepare you to deal with crocodiles and the like? How did that all work?
Well, the coolest thing about the zoo was that we got to wear khaki.
Okay.
And funnily enough, the accounts team, which I think was a setup, were always the first people to trial an encounter with an animal. So we were like the ones that they put in the deep end where they hadn't had an animal exposed to a person.
Okay.
So it was a little bit intimidating, but I think they chose us because we're generally conservative. So it was very much standoffish and whatnot. But my time at Accounting Professionals gave me enough knowledge to be able, and it was through the Board of Management Services that is still, what do you call it now?
Our coaching program.
Coaching program. So from a very young age, 17 years ago, Mark would have me in meetings where we would do the business mentoring and business coaching and Board of Management Service. And those meetings are structured around 4 quadrants of a business. And it's the same thing in an operation. It's just on a larger scale, ultimately. So it actually did prepare me not to deal with the crocodiles, but to deal with the people that ran the business divisions. Because I just saw each division like an individual client, ultimately.
Yeah. And I guess everyone is wanting to know the answer to this question. Did you have much exposure to the early ones?
I did.
Yeah.
Not too much, but they are very much actively in the business every day, which is really, they're lovely people and genuine. So it's good in lots of ways. Very much also around having exposure to people that don't just run their business from a profit perspective. There's other roles there.
Okay. Yeah, well, they've certainly kicked on since then, which is very good. So you mentioned you spent 2 years at the zoo.
Yes.
Where did you end up after that?
So following that, and I started to get itchy feet. I was in my late 20s at the time, and I actually missed the exposure to lots of different businesses. It was an interesting role, challenging in its own way, but I love what I do because of the business owners that I get to meet and essentially help. And I was approached by a firm that a director of Crow Horwath had joined, and they were similar size to AP public practice in Brisbane. However, they were different in that they had an offshore business in India, where effectively that was our production unit. So the work that I did there was public practice based, but rather than working with a team of accountants in an office, we had managers in India that would ultimately provide financials to then allow us to go and work closely with clients, was that business model. So I got the best of both worlds. Had the opportunity from that within sort of, after being with Barton Group for a couple of years, of building outsourced finance function. So they had a bookkeeping division that we turned, it was Intersync at the time, me and a couple of colleagues basically created an outsourced CFO offering, utilising our Indian resources to do the numbers, and then with a couple of commercial accountants and CFOs on the ground.
Yeah, and I remember around that time we were at a wedding. I don't know if you remember this. Tegan, shout out to Tegan if she's watching, I'm sure she is. But we were at Tegan's wedding, and you were talking to me about what you were doing in relation to the team in India, and we were at the time considering a similar solution, and that was really the birth of our team overseas in the Philippines. So yes, I remember going up to Brisbane and sitting in the offices with you guys and getting an understanding of how you were doing it. And the rest is history. We've sort of must have been about 8 years ago, because Arlen and Anel have been with us now for nearly 8 years.
Okay.
So
excellent. Yeah, no, it's great because it allows people like us to actually have more time with clients.
Yeah.
Which is where we add value. So and that's why I love working in that structure too. Then, what's next? So a bit of a pivot, still associated with that business. I actually became the business development and sales person for a funding company that was associated with Barton Group, ABL Corp. ABL Corp provided outsourced CFO offering and a line of credit to SMEs. So I've jumped into a seat of basically just going and meeting referral partners and businesses and problem solving how ABL Corp could help their clients. That's the previous sort of 2.5, 3 years. It provided a whole nother layer of commercial aspect for me, because you start to deal with bankers who...
Sorry, bankers, did you say?
Yeah,
Just
bankers.
making sure I heard that right.
What did you think I said?
Oh, don't worry.
Bankers, finance professionals, brokers that are very much strong in business, opposed to looking at it just from an accounting sense. So, and the team at ABL Corp that delivered the services were a similar skill set to myself, in that they'd all worked as commercial managers or CFOs in businesses, opposed to in a public practice seat. So the work is very much similar, but also extremely different.
Yeah, and I guess that's you, as I mentioned earlier, sort of you left here as primarily a tax accountant.
Yeah.
And have come back with a whole lot of new tools in your kit bag as a result of that that experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's always been, ever since Gary started the practice, our philosophy has always been that we bring trainees on, and I think you just finished uni at the time when you started.
Yeah.
And basically give our team the skills that within 5 years they can go out and be employable anywhere in the world. And I think you're probably a good example of that.
Definitely.
But in sort of those subsequent 10 or so, 11 or so years that you've been out, you've really built on those skills. And now we're fortunate that you've come back and have the ability to, one of the things I've noticed that you do look at things through a totally different lens to what we're used to. And that's a really valuable skill and to have, not just for us internally, but also our clients as well.
Yeah, definitely. It comes with a proactive and more operational focus opposed to a historical focus on financials, which I've been fortunate to have the time to be able to do that, whereas the skill set is there with any accountant really, but they've always got so much on their plate they don't get to do it.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's been enjoyable to watch it grow out here as well.
Yeah. So what have you been doing? Well, I obviously know what you've been doing since you've come back. For those listening, what have you been doing for us since you've been back?
Yeah. So we're probably at week 6, I feel like, or maybe week 5. I'm not sure. Yeah.
It's gone quickly.
It's a month at least, just over a month. So working closely with a couple of the team here, Zach being one of them in particular, and then Anel, looking at the clients where we're delivering a recurring outsourced bookkeeping function or finance function to at the moment, and streamlining how that delivery is occurring and making sure that from a client's perspective it's really clear on deadlines and output so that they're aware of what happens every day, week, fortnight, month, because it is a high touch service offering. In line with that, so that's sort of the core component of it, we're looking at issuing monthly management reports versus forecasts, doing deep dives on budgets that have already been done and understanding why certain businesses aren't where they should be or are where they should be. And just looking at the opportunity also, we're doing one operational project for a client which is around streamlining their production unit, their evaluation business, and they obviously do similar work to us but different, and they haven't had the capacity they haven't had the capacity to improve their own business processes. So we've got an 8-week project on process improvement and a software implementation for that client. So a little bit happening in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think you've come in as our problem solver, and I don't mean that. And it's probably less on the less from the client-facing side of things, but really come in and had a look about how we do things internally in relation to those engagements, and looked at driving the efficiency. Not only efficiency, but managing our risk, and making sure that we're delivering for the clients.
And again, that really is around having a structure on communication and what we need from the client and what we're providing to the client on a timeline perspective, because it's not a once a month touch point or a once a year touch point. It potentially is many times a day. So just making sure that we're doing that well and the client experience is where it should be as well. And
in your experience, not only with the work that you're now doing here in our practice, but that you've done previously, what sort of skills does let's say an outsourced finance function or an outsourced CFO, for want of a better word, what are the different skills that they bring to the table in relation to helping clients with their businesses?
I guess to look at it quite summarised, they're closer to the operations of the business. So a public practice accountant or an external once a month, quarter, end of year accountant will look at the results as they arrive to them, assess them, provide analysis and feedback. whereas a commercial manager and or CFO will be there while it's happening and influential to the people that actually drive the results. So in that, an example would be looking at the way that I'll use a maintenance service business. They're actually resourcing the delivery of that work. So a public practice accountant would say you've got known revenue of $10,000 a month, it's tracking to where you thought, and commercial manager is there saying who's doing the work, what's our labour recovery like, what is the margin, what impacts the margin. When you're involved in the business closely, you can actually influence how those resources are deployed. When you're looking at it at month end, you can inform the business owner and keep them accountable to it, but you're not actually in the seat to help them improve their margins. That's probably one part. Secondly to that, in a similar sort of situation, a commercial manager or CFO would look to de-risk the business operationally. So working with their customers from a debtor perspective is really important, making sure that the right practices are in place on the way that trade applications are done, potential security registrations on businesses, setting strict processes on collecting money as well, because really if a customer knows that they're going to be followed up at day 2, 7, 14 and you don't go away and it's actually a business operating rhythm, then they're more likely and will engage where they get behind in payment. So that's really imperative for cash flow, which is obviously a huge issue of SMEs generally in a lot of industries. So that's probably one thing. The other thing is also being more involved in insurance. Like we can, as public practice accountants, we can help with it, but when again you haven't got that in-depth knowledge of how to potentially explain to an insurance broker or company what it is that you're actually insuring. I had an example in a business that I was a CFO on that they'd had the same insurance broker for 10 years and he was paying for good transportation insurance, and it was a meat product, so it had to be in a cool room environment obviously, and had an incident where it had spoiled, and when the claim went to be made, and it was $50,000, so it was a lot of meat, the insurance broker sent this form of who was driving the truck, what was the temperature at the beginning, what was the temperature at the end. So there was no way when that delivery was outsourced to a 3PL that they were ever going to have that data, nor would they expect from a transport company that they would do that for you, because they just don't. And that policy was costing him tens of thousands of dollars of every year to insure his goods, and he would never have ever been able to make a claim on it. So it's things like knowing those operational ins and outs, and probably the last piece, which is a major component of what you would be exposed to, is funding the business and making sure that the right funding structures with the business, with the right assets secured, working with banks and or other financiers that specialise in the industry. You just haven't got the time when you're not in that commercial service offering to be able to do that.
So from what you've described, it is really, you are really involved in the nuts and bolts of the business. From a delivery point of view, is that, how much time would you generally spend on site at the client's businesses, or is how much of it is done off-site? It
can vary depending on what's happening in the business. Depending, one day a month can be enough with the right, external expectations. So being available to management and having weekly check-ins, and then being on site to present reports and do a bit of a fact find on what's happening is sufficient. Or if the business is going through an event that might be a bit more hand-holding, which could involve like an annual insurance review, pricing reset, potential resourcing, like assessment of a lot of business owners. I think they still would come to you, Mark, and say, I'm thinking about hiring someone else, how does that look? Sometimes being on the ground gives you a bigger picture of who's actually doing what. The other sort of example where you'd be more on site would be a change of like a software implementation. So it could be an industry specific CRM or inventory control or something like that. So I guess to answer it more clearly, it being as an outsourced resource, you turn it up and down as the business needs, but generally for a business that turns over about less than 10 mil, 1 day a month would be sufficient to be able to add that value.
And part of that engagement would be, I guess, the routine type of work,
right.
the potentially, and any combination of bookkeeping, payroll, management reporting,
accounts payable,
accounts receivable, those sort of things. But then expanding into probably what you touched on earlier, different project work.
Right.
And I know one of the things that we've been talking about is enterprise agreements and being involved in that with employees and things like that, where there's the ability for clients or businesses out there to engage on an ad hoc project basis as well. But engaging with someone that's got commercial skills as opposed to the more traditional tax and accounting type work, which is not to say that that's not important, but there's a lot of components in the client's business where that's probably not relevant.
That's right. It's a byproduct of business. It's a compliance need, and it's important where things are happening that they need to plan for business sales and restructures and retirement and all of those things that make a huge difference from a cost perspective for businesses. But this is more the nuts and bolts of what's happening for the business and the business owners on the ground.
Yeah, and I think, and we do talk to clients and we talk about it internally. It's about having the right people doing the right type of work. And often business owners are excellent technicians at their core skill, whether that's engineering or electrical work or building or plumbing, whatever the case might be. They're not generally skilled in on some of the finance components, and as their businesses grow, that function becomes more important. And I guess their time can be better spent focusing on the core drivers of the business, and then have a team behind them to make sure everything else is on the straight and narrow. Yeah,
for sure. It's something that I would very much use to explain, and it's probably quite a common saying, is that the wearer of many hats is a small to medium business owner, where they will be on the tools, they'll be doing payroll, they'll be dealing with queries to be associated with tax, then they'll jump into HR, then God forbid something happens, and then all of a sudden, like a work cover incident, and they're dealing with insurance, and the idea of an outsourced CFO and commercial offering is that those balls that get thrown in the air often are caught by someone else, or at least the business owner's got the support of someone else, particularly in our mum and dad type businesses. They would be up at night when things like that happen. And for them to be able to pick up the phone and have reassurance, which I know that a lot of the clients of AP do with their current service offering as well, but to then be able to have the resources here to actually execute that, opposed to just giving them a bit of a roadmap as to how to get out of it, is just so valuable, because then they can focus on doing the technical work that they do better and ultimately improving their business profitability.
Yeah, and we didn't rehearse this, funnily enough, but you mentioned the hats that business owners wear, and that's one of the, when we're meeting with our clients, whether it be quarterly or monthly, that's actually one slide that we put up on the screen.
There you go. See, I told you it's common. We might have to start wearing hats. We should get a construction hat. I'll walk in with a professor hat. No, Gary can wear that one. He can wear the academic hat.
and there are 10 hats, and we talk about them. The 10 hats, and there's the hat as the director, and then there's the hat as the CEO, and then there's, like you mentioned, there's a sales hat, there's a product development hat, there's a HR hat, finance, marketing, risk management, and one of the things that we talk about with clients about, and it's building a sustainable business and one that's not reliant on them, is to start taking some of those hats off. And some hats are easier to take off than others. The finance one is often an easy one to talk to clients about, because that's obviously we can play a role in that. And that's something that we could take off their hands, but importantly still provide them with the I guess the confidence that they still know what's going on
Exactly.
in their business, because often when people outsource different functions, and whether that is the HR function or it could be the marketing function, the finance function, there is a feeling of loss of control.
Definitely.
And I guess that's where, you know, the way to overcome that is the communication back to the owners, and that would be an integral part of what you do as well.
Definitely. It is about that expectation of them, both from a how the service is structured and what information is required, and as you scale this type of thing too, you're not just working with a business owner, you're also working with key people in the business. So it's ensuring that both parties know what they expect from us and what we expect from them, and putting a stringent timeline around it. Not only indifferent to best practice of running the way that AP does it, where there's a monthly office meeting, there's a monthly partner meeting, there's clear communication out to staff. From an organisational culture perspective, that happens internally here. The same thing our clients that are businesses do with their team, we then become a part of their team on an outsourced basis. So it's actually setting those ground rules of how we work together so that they're reassured. Probably the beauty of having it as an outsourced offering compared to an in-house employment position for a CFO or commercial manager type person is that in this example, you're not just receiving the skill set of one person. So if I went and worked in a business, I bring to the table what my skill is as a CFO. However, in an outsourced position and providing it as AP, they get a panel of professionals in order to deliver that. And when something happens that I'm not too sure of, I can go, Mark, have you dealt with this? Can you help me deliver that component? So you get all of our hats adding value to the business, and that can really change what sort of advice they get.
Yeah. And that was probably going to be sort of my final question, because I'm conscious that we could talk all day about this. Is there an ideal client from our point of view, or is there a particular size of business where these sort of offerings become relevant?
The beauty of it is that it's tailored to the business needs, and I don't know if you've noticed it since we've been working together again, but when I take notes, I put things in boxes, and the delivery and the way that the services can be structured can be in boxes, and it is really saying, okay, let's start as basic as bookkeeping, and that is in quadrants of accounts receivable, AP, month-end, payroll. So do they have a payroll person that's leaving? We can fill that gap, whether it's on a long-term basis or an interim basis. That one's really good for like leave and things like that, because everyone needs to do their pays and it's got a really good contingency plan. So that can be tailored to a point in time or on a recurring basis that we complete the whole service offering end to end and replace an internal resource. The management reporting, that I think any business that isn't looking at their scorecard should be in some form, and it can be done in depth or it can be done at a brief assessment. So you can offer that sort of service anywhere from startup through to a $50 million turnover business ultimately. And then I think the piece that we've really unpacked even with our own discussions and today is that the project work can happen as and when it's required. So it's not about specifically saying we can only do this. It's identifying that a business has a change event going on, and they should ask the question, can we help with a tender, like an actual tendering review or enterprise agreement, things like that. Things will pop up, and we would then scope how we're going to deliver it, provide them with a quote on it, and a timeline ultimately.
Yeah.
So really, no, there isn't a specific. It ranges anywhere from startup to 50 million.
And one of the things we have spoken about is, as part of doing these engagements, we are designing a system that will outlive us.
Yes.
So there will no doubt become a time where it makes financial sense for an organisation to employ their own people to do it. But what they're also getting is they're getting a system that they can follow that we've created.
For sure.
That caters for a task being done by employees within the business, or if those employees aren't there for whatever reason, we can jump back in.
It's probably
and
not.
follow the system.
It's not any different to setting a business up for a business owner to be made redundant. Effectively, it's the same
Yep.
thing. If we make ourselves redundant through a streamlining and efficiency review and structure their finance function to be that way, then we've done our job because we've made ourselves redundant.
Excellent.
Not that I want to make us redundant. That's what we're trying to do from it for the business. It's not just a resource. It's a system.
But for most business owners, the goal is to make themselves redundant. It's to take those 10 hats off and maybe only have one being the director hat.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us and explaining a little bit about your background and what we're doing now.
No, my pleasure. I'll be here all the time now.
But you don't escape that easily because we've got our quick 9-question get to know
I haven't
you.
had a chance to think about these, so they'll be interesting.
So, how did you come to being, let's call it an accountant? I know that's a general term, and you're probably more a CFO now, but how did you sort of come to wanting to be involved in the industry?
I really enjoyed business studies in year 11 and 12, and I was actually telling Ange about this the other day because her daughter's doing exercise phys.
Okay.
Originally I applied to go to Wollongong Uni to do exercise, exercise science.
Yep.
But I went to an open day and saw the cadavers.
Oh.
And someone in the class was in biology fainted onto the table, and I was like, how much time do you spend in the lab? And got very, very turned off doing anything to do with science. And then I got a traineeship with another firm in Wollongong.
Yep.
So I sort of fell into it, but I did enjoy the business studies side, and I got turned off doing what I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
So
it's funny you should say that. I had wanted to be an accountant forever, coming from a family of accountants.
Yeah.
So I had applied to do accounting at uni, but exercise science, funnily enough, was my second.
Yeah.
And over the period from when I finished high school to uni started, I was sort of starting to think, oh, do I really want to do accounting, or do I?
Yeah. It appears as boring when you're in your late teens, but it's not.
But within the first week of uni, when we started talking about debits and credits, it was like, I've made the right decision.
Oh, you liked it.
Yeah, no, I liked it. That's why I'm still doing it.
That's a good rule.
What do you think will be the biggest influence, say in the industry, in the next 5 years? And we have spoken about this, and you can't say AI.
Yeah, I thought about this one. I actually did think about this one. Because it is AI. We all know it is. But I thought about a secondary impact of that. And I was fortunate enough last year to go to an insolvency conference in Canberra at Parliament House.
Okay.
Insolvency people are wild too, so those conferences are a lot of fun. Seriously, they work hard and play hard. There's a reason. There was I wish I was going to look it up, but I didn't get time. A guy that presented is one of the most progressive AI sort of knowledge people in Australia, and he referred to AI as the next industrial revolution.
Yep.
And explained that over the past century that when an industrial revolution occurs, it halves in time. So one of the things that he pointed out is that the last one was like 15 years. This is going to be 6 ultimately. So what we've been doing over the last 2 to 3, ultimately the way that business is run is going to be different again in another 2 to 3 years. It's that real and that live. And I think I started to think through, well, what happens in an industrial evolution? Like, it's not the AI is the cause, but what actually is the effect? And I think for accountants, not around how we deliver, but particularly for our business owners, that the challenge is going to be pivoting to learn how to do what they do in business differently because of AI.
Yep.
So it's already here. We're using it every day, but the proactive and more visionary businesses who start thinking about how does this impact my business in 2 to 3 years, and we're going to have to help them with that. So that's where I actually see it as both a challenge and an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's going to be different.
Yeah. And then, as you know, this week we've rolled out our AI solutions to our team, and that's that's probably a conversation for another podcast, to be perfectly honest, the process that we've gone through to get to this point. But
definitely.
making sure we've got all the necessarily controls and protections in place. But we're using Microsoft Copilot, and we've just started rolling that out to the team this week, and the uptake's been pretty high from what I can see just in the last couple of days.
Well, and it is that, Mark, because you sort of go, well, what would have previously taken one of the senior accountants 3 hours now might take them 30 minutes. So how do we as a business utilise that excess capacity and actually drive what's going on, rather than just letting the employee, and I'm not meaning this in any way aside from saying it's an opportunity for businesses to actually have a higher production and or margin, and planning for that. I think is the next big change generally.
And having the right controls around it.
Definitely. And a plan. Yeah, like just going, okay, well now you've got extra time, let's do this, and leveraging it as well. So it is AI, but it's different as the
good answer. I'll give you a pass for that one.
Awesome.
What's been the best career decision that you've made?
I was thinking about it. I did think about it. There you go. I thought that I didn't. I think this one kind of rings home for me, and it's a little bit, funnily enough, did the full circle home. I think the biggest career decision for me was around changing the path that I was on to have time and balance for my family, and particularly my child Kai. And it's quite important for working career women as well, and the way that you choose to structure your life. Working in a very corporate finance, male-driven role previously, it just got to a point where I went, you know what, this isn't actually my goal in life. It's sort of, I needed to realign to my values. So that's quite personal, but I went, that was really the best thing I ever did, was making the decision not to continue on that trajectory and actually restructure what I was doing to have the best of both worlds.
If you had your time again, what would be the one thing you do differently?
Oh, I don't think I'd do anything differently.
Okay.
I don't. I've made some silly mistakes at times, but one of my previous bosses said to me, it's only a mistake if you do it twice.
Yep.
So I actually live off that a little bit, because it's like, well, you're going to learn somehow, don't you? So.
Well, that's a good segue into my next question. What's the best piece of advice that you've received?
Probably that. Yeah, I think it is, because it puts you in if you've got a leader that allows you the opportunity to do that, you're in a position of not being afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll take a step going, oh, this might work out. And also, if you don't ask, you don't get. Yep. And that's not necessarily as an individual, it's also for business owners and helping them potentially push the boundary on trying to get an outcome as well.
Yeah. Well, I have heard that phrase over the last
from me
4 or 5 weeks a number of times.
Well, and you get used to being rejected, so you just have a crack and then try again. Why not?
Favourite sporting team?
We spoke about this. I used to watch NRL.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's your favourite activity away from the office? We'll change the question up a bit. What do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Going to the beach.
Yep.
Yeah, we're very much a beach family. I find it, whether it's hot or like I like to walk, go to the gym. Unfortunately, I'm in my Pilates era now too.
Okay.
It's like, I feel like you get to over close to 40 and you're on.
You're out of the gym.
You're out of the gym and on a reformer.
Favourite holiday destination?
Do you know, we went to the Whitsundays again recently and have been a few times, and I feel like for an easy domestic trip, it's pretty special out there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's in our own backyard, so I'd say the Whitsundays.
A bucket list activity? Something you haven't done yet that you really like to do?
I don't have I actually want to, I used to ride horses as a child and I want to get back into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't fall off and that's my midlife crisis activity.
And finally, data or data?
Data.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've passed. You can stay for another 5 weeks.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for joining us, Mel. It's obviously great to have you back.
Good to be back.
and yeah, looking forward to seeing opportunities present themselves over the next little while.
Me too.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us for episode 5 of Beyond the Balance Sheet. You can catch up on our previous episodes on YouTube and now Spotify. We look forward to seeing you for episode 6.